All right, welcome to week 7 for English 125. Congratulations, you've made it to week 7, the final draft of your research paper. We've come a long way in just the last 7 weeks. We've really been working hard on developing this research project, all the different elements and stages and details that have gone into this. And no doubt it has been a challenging session in this course. This class is full of challenges, not just the actual course itself, not just the actual assignments, and then the task of developing and writing this 10-page research paper, but there's also all those other things that go along with it, just being a student, the things that take place outside of school, the things that go along with life and the conflicts and trials that we do encounter. So all those things, it does make for a challenging 8 weeks, challenging 7 weeks as far as where we're at right now. But I just wanted to congratulate you on persevering, because really that's, I think, what a lot of this course is perseverance and really engaging the course material and really putting forth that effort and that discipline of really seeing it through. And sometimes, ideally, we want to complete every assignment thoroughly, give it our best that we can for every assignment. But of course, sometimes things come along and can unfortunately make that very difficult, or maybe we're not able to really do our best in certain areas. But at least at this point, you've made it to week 7, whether, regardless of the state of your draft right now, for week 6, coming into week 7, at least hopefully you're there with 10 pages in that draft. Hopefully you're there. Hopefully you have a substantial draft that's gone through the stages of revision, and you've received feedback from the online tutors, you've received feedback from me, and hopefully you've incorporated that, hopefully you've utilized that, and hopefully it's been useful to you. Most importantly, hopefully the usefulness of the feedback that you received altogether has helped to make for a better paper. So now moving into this final draft, that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have work to do. There's still a lot of work to do in this week. There's still a lot of meticulous, uh, revision to do, editing to do. There's always the refinement that can take place in a paper. I mean, you could carry this out 3, 4, 5 drafts if you really wanted to. This could really be a never-ending process of refinement and trying to perfect really your work. Perfection really is the goal. And now, is perfection practical in an 8-week course? Maybe not. But we want to get as close as we can to a perfect draft, as close as we can. And of course, the grade will reflect the quality of the work and the effort that's been put in, the hard work that's been put in will not be in vain. And so what you've invested into this course will certainly pay off in terms of how diligent and disciplined you've been under whatever circumstances you've experienced to really put forth the effort to produce quality work. So this week 7, is going to be to refine and to perfect what you have. There may still be, depending on where you're at in the process or in the stage of drafting, you may still have some content to make up. That's not ideal, but it may be a reality that you might be on page 9. You still have one more page of content. There may be some challenges and some obstacles depending on the rhetorical situation that you're engaged in for this paper. There may be some obstacles that you've had to overcome to get to that full 10 pages. Now, 10 pages is what we want. We want concise work. So if you're going over that, 10, 11 is fine. 12 would be questionable. I mean, do you really need that 12th page? You could probably edit out something and refine something, condense something to really meet that 10 and a half, 10 page 11 at the most page paper. We want 10. 10 is, because I think with 10, it's been revised down, it's been reduced down to those 10 pages, and it should be clear and concise work. So if you're going 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 pages, you're probably saying more than you really need to. There's probably some wordiness in your writing that you can edit out and revise down and then edit to make it more concise and to the point. But again, I'm being general, so it's hard to really know exactly where you're at without a specific email informing me of where you're at in the process. So there's a spectrum in this week as well. So ideally, hopefully you're down with all 10 pages. Hopefully you've followed the previous stages of the drafting and you're moving through. Now you're going to be working on, for this week, sentence level editing and I'm sorry, sentence level revising and word usage revising, then which will lead into the actual editing of grammar and punctuation and mechanics and the MLA APA style that you're using. So that's the progression of how the revision process takes place. It looks at the paper as a whole, then it breaks it down into its larger chunks as paragraphs, then it narrows down further to the actual sentence level, word level, and that's how you really want to approach it. Don't just try to to revise and edit a paper all together, all at once, all in one step. It's really to your disadvantage because there's just so much to work with. There's so many details, and it is a detriment to your grade, which I've learned from experience. It's a detriment to your grade, and it's a disadvantage to you just to give it a reading over a few times and go, it's fine, I'll turn it in. Really, I don't do that. You want to go through these, drafting and revision processes as part of the writing process to really refine your work to get the best possible grade that you can receive based on your work. So, so I kind of wanted to just, as an overview for this week and as a kind of a reflection back on the course of what we've done so far and where we're at now, just to kind of bring things full circle just so we can see how this writing process has really developed for us. So if you remember, in week 1, it was just a blank slate. It was, okay, we have to choose a topic. And so you chose a general topic out of a number of different topics. You probably had a listing of topics. You probably had some kind of brainstorming session where you were able to pick out maybe the top 5 topics that interest you. And then from that, you chose one topic. And then from that, you developed an argument in relation to that topic. You took a position on a particular controversy within that topic. And then from that, we went into searching for sources, looking at the library databases. We worked on our annotated bibliography. We looked at our sources to see what their content is about, what their main idea is about, what argument those sources are about for each one of them, and how it would relate to our overall paper and how we intended on using those sources individually within the paper. And some of that was tentative, some of that was speculative. Maybe some of those sources did not end up in the paper. Maybe they got replaced. Maybe they got swapped out, possibly. Maybe you have all new sources. Hopefully, they're all 10 of them at a minimum are scholarly, peer-reviewed, journal published articles, not necessarily from a website, .com or .org or whatever. As we know, those sources are not credible, unfortunately. They're really just anecdotal, illustrative types of sources that can be used, but the real core of your sources really should be and ought to be scholarly, peer-reviewed articles from our databases in the library. So we looked at that. Then we went into more pre-writing. It could have been free write. It could have been it could have been outlining. It could have been listing. It could have been some type of brainstorming, some kind of exercise to really get ideas flowing for that research topic and argument and thesis statement. And then we moved into the drafting stage. We had a proposal that dictated, explained, the intentions of the paper, what we were attempting to argue, and how does that relate to the goals of the course. And then that went into the drafting stage. So then whatever research that you'd conducted, whatever quotations you may have taken down for notes, any ideas that you had taken down in notes, then begin to develop into your paper. And so we've gone through so far 2 stages of drafting. And remember, drafting is a process of creating new content and then going back and revising over that, changing, refining, replacing any content that we saw that may be not quite right, not quite up to what's being most effective for the communication that we're trying to achieve with our argument. Okay, so now we're in that 3rd stage. We're in that 3rd draft, which will then be submitted this week, week 7, on Sunday. That's the final deadline. That's really just to make you aware. That's the final deadline, if you remember, for all late work. It's really the final deadline for all work, including the final draft of the research paper and any work that took place before that. After this Sunday of week 7, no late work will be accepted. And that's really just because of the amount of grading that needs to take place at the end of week 7 into week 8. Then week 8 is the reflection assignment, and that's going to be due on the Friday of week 8. So I'll be reminding you of that, but that's due on a Friday. So then there's a very short turnaround time for that weekend for all the grading to be completed by that following Monday. Okay, so that's the main reason why Sunday of week 7, I can't accept any further late work after that, because the amount of grading that will need to take place. I mean, you figure it takes on average about 20 to 30 minutes per research paper to grade, and if there's 20 papers, that's hours of work. So then if there's late work on top of that that's being submitted, then that just increases the amount of time that needs to be spent in evaluating that work and then grading it. There's a final deadline on that week 8 where the grades must be submitted. So all that has to be taken care of. So just to remind you, Sunday week 7, final due date for all late work. So as we work closer to that for this final draft, I'm looking forward to it and the final development of your hard work in this course. For the next 2 lecture videos, we're going to be looking at the revision on the sentence level and word level. We looked at initially for our previous drafting stages, we looked at revision on the paragraph level and the whole essay. And so this is going to narrow down even further to sentence and word level. And that's really how you want to approach revision, and in your future papers, start with the essay as a whole, looking at how things work together, and then move it down to the paragraph level, how that all correlates together as a paragraph. And then we want to go down even further to the sentence level to see how those sentences are functioning, and then even further with the word usage and how that word usage is being implemented, and hopefully it's effective in communicating exactly what you're meaning, what you're trying to get across to the reader. All right. And then we're going to look at, hopefully discuss Christian relevance, faith integration for composition, this type of a course, and writing, and how does that relate to our faith, a Christian worldview? So we'll be maybe posing some questions about that in one of the videos for this week. So really for the assignments, we're going to talk about that. There's no further reading assignments, no further research necessary, unless you have another source that you need to find. If you're still have to have that one last source, hopefully not, but I guess it's possible. no further work to do other than the research, other than finalizing this last draft. So the schedule for this week is very simple. It's just review the lecture videos for this week and work on that final draft and submit that draft by Sunday before midnight. Before midnight is when it's due, or by 11:59 p.m. Uh, Now, there are two submissions for this draft. Remember that. There are two places for submission. There is first in Blackboard. You're going to submit to Blackboard their critical assignment submission. And then you're going to submit that also to TaskStream. And TaskStream is a separate website. You'll just need to follow the links there in the activities, but it needs to be in both. TaskStream is the database for the critical assignment, so that needs to be in both, in Blackboard and TaskStream, for you to receive your grade. So if there is any issue with either submission, I will certainly contact you, but it definitely needs to be in both. Otherwise, it doesn't count as a submission. So we need to have that in both. So be very careful and follow the specific instructions through the activities links to make sure it's submitted correctly and accurately. So you also have to submit this to an originality assessment for plagiarism. So you'll definitely need to submit that through SafeAssign, and it will generate an originality report. All right. So those are really the only items that are really crucial for this week, for week 7. But I wanted to remind you to write to the rubric. Really look at the prompt and really read very closely for what the prompt is looking for. There are 7 main categories of evaluation for the rubric. And so you want to look at each of those 7 categories and be sure that you're implementing each of those elements. That is, I'll go through each of these here. So a clear arguable position, the necessary background information, whether that's historical background or the technical background. Depending on your topic, you may have a historical background to the argument that you're making. Some may have a historical and a technical background. There may be terms that are technical that we need to understand before we can really understand your argument and your topic. So there may be a history of development there, and then there may be a history of technology, some kind of technical terminology and concepts, and how that all correlates together. If you're doing, perhaps something computer related, you're going to have some kind of historical, when this particular software was, came out on the market, and some of, there's these specific terms that relate to that software and the specific functioning of that software, and then the context of how that relates to other products of software that do the same thing, or maybe how this is revolutionary and it has a whole new function that really changes things altogether. And that's just a hypothetical example, but you kind of get the idea. There can be a technical background, there can be historical background, and there can be both. So you really need to use discernment on how to approach that background information from either way or both ways. Okay. And then also there's number 3, good reasons. So as the reader, we need to really understand or get a real sense that there is some strong underlying reasons for you writing about this topic. We really need to get a sense that, okay, this is a really important topic. This really deserves consideration. So you want to convey that in the writing. It doesn't necessarily have to be overtly stated, but there should be some connotation, some sense of the amount of importance that is behind this particular argument that you're making. What's at stake? What is at stake for your topic? And how can you help the reader understand that as you convey your argument? And then fourthly, convincing evidence. Now this is a challenging part of the topic of your paper, of course, because you're having to find sources that are scholarly, and then you have to integrate them into your paper. So are they being integrated effectively? Are they being utilized effectively? Are they effectively supporting your argument and supporting really the topic sentence of your paragraph that you're actually including that support in? Okay, so the source supports the topic sentence of that paragraph in which you're discussing and then quoting that material. Or it doesn't necessarily have to be a quote, it could be a summary or a paraphrase as well. Depending on what style you're using, some are more heavily quoted, some are more heavily paraphrased in their styles. So, but are the sources being integrated effectively, and is the evidence that you're using convincing enough to hopefully convince the reader to consider at least your argument? Okay. Next, number 5, appeal to the reader's values. And it's not just a mentioning of, well, some may say or one might argue, and then it's just one sentence. You want to deal with that topic. You want to explain that topic and analyze that topic, analyze that argument, not just mention it. We need to, at this stage, at the final draft stage, the reader really should have an understanding not only of your argument, but how your argument how your argument is in contrast to the other opposing view. What is the opposing view? What are the main ideas of the opposing view? What are the main points of the opposing view? And really, ultimately, we want to know, how does that correlate with your idea, and how is your idea or your argument more logical or reasonable, or the better course of action in comparison? Okay, so it's not just a passing mention of an opposing view, it is a dealing with and explaining of that opposing view and an emphasizing it, and conceding in some ways and then not conceding in other ways to some of the points that may come along with that opposing view. So you really deal with the opposing view. Further, trustworthy tone. Are you coming across with that ethos that really shows that you have an understanding and you have somewhat of a mastery of the subject matter and of your argument, that you're credible, that you yourself are a credible, though you're writing in third person, but there is a credibility to the voice of the writing that's coming through. Not just the sources that are being used, but how the sources, not just the sources that are being used, but how they're being used, if they're being used in a fair way, a balanced way. And so does that make you as the writer trustworthy? Is there a trustworthy tone? And then lastly, a careful consideration of other positions. So not just the opposing view, but the variety of views that may surround your topic. So you really want to consider that. What are these other views going on, and how do I want to address them? So hopefully you've already dealt with these things. Hopefully you're still just you're now in a refinement stage for this, and it's not, okay, how am I going to really talk about this? Hopefully you've already done it, and now it's just making that more effective in how you're explaining that. Okay, so really focus on the rubric, and if you pay close attention to that and follow those instructions, hopefully the grade will really take care of itself. That's really what we're after, as each of those main points. So we're going to leave it at that for this overview. So we're going to move on to our other videos. All right, well, thank you. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.